So welcome to this video. In this video we are going to discuss about the case topic internal control. So this case is going to discuss about a company called as Yaya, and this has appeared in the 2012 December exam of ACCA. So we'll start from the requirement. So there are like three requirements here. So we'll be like discussing about requirement B alone. So requirement A is explain typically reasons why an internal control system might be ineffective. So this is a very general question and it just gives you 5 marks. So you have to just write 5 to 7 points to tell like why an internal control system can be ineffective. So there are like plenty of points which you can write, and that too this question is not related to the case study, so you can write any number, any point which is from your textbook. So it's a very general kind of a question. So this is what the case actually deals about. Explain the internal control deficiencies that led to the increased product failures at Yaya. So what are the internal control deficiencies that have increased the number of product failures in the company Yaya? So we have to find out what are the internal control deficiencies, and it has 10 marks here. So 10 marks refers to we have to find about 10 to 12 points. So we'll start from here. In order to make it much more easier to understand, I have given in codes like this. So this question is concerned about control activities. So these are the control activities which a company has. Usually it is called as in the word spam soap. So SPAM SOA and P. So spam soap. So I have used some codings like this. So SE refers to segregation of duties, or PH refers to physical controls. So you would have already studied these topics. We'll just see its application to the case. So here we will start from what is the company about, and then we will discuss about the deficiencies in the company. In Yaya company, operations director Ben Janoon recently realized that there have been an increase in product failing in the final checks. These checks were carried out in the QC laboratory, which tested finished goods products before being released for sale. The product failure rate had risen from 1% 2 years ago to 4% now, and this meant an increase in in hundreds of items of output a month which were not sold to Yaya's customers. So what is the kind of internal control deficiencies here? See, somewhere the company is like producing goods and then it is sending it to a lab. The lab has to approve whether the goods are of good quality, and the number of rejection rates from the lab seems to be now at a higher rate. Earlier it was just 1%, now it is around 4%. So, and that too in a short span of 2 years. So what is the failure here is the management control. So management control refers to how the management tracks the reports from the QC department, how it reads them, how it analyzes them, and takes action on the reports. So there has been a failure on the part of Mr. Janoon in terms of analyzing the reports from the lab. And because of this increase of 4% of QC failures, this has led to hundreds of products which have been failed. So this is a significant kind of a problem now. So only when the problem has become significant, they have started to investigate it. At least now they have investigated it, but either way, it's a management control failure. So we'll go to the second paragraph. The failed products had no value to the company once they have failed the QC, as the rework costs were not economic. So they are just scrap items. Because the increase was gradual, it took a while for Mr. Janoon to realize that the failure rate had risen. So again, this is a management control failure, because he should have periodically checked like what is the QC failure rate, something like once in 6 months or once in a month, or some kind of a periodic review he should have taken. That he has failed. A thorough review of the main production operation revealed nothing that might explain the increased failure, and so the attention focused instead on the QC lab. So they have found like where the problem was, whether it's in the production stage or in which stage. The production seems to be very good, but it's only at the QC stage where the goods are being rejected. So it's something like the goods are good at times of production, but once it goes to the laboratory, it is getting rejected. So that's what this line says. For some years, the QC laboratory at Yaya, managed by Jane Ju, had been marginalized in the company, with its 2 staff working in a remote laboratory well away from other employees. So usually any department should be in a nearby surrounding of other people. So that should be some kind of physical control. So that should be physical control. And when there are people, they have to be also supervised. So there seems to be like no supervision control here, because the lab is very far away. There are only 3 employees, which is the Jane Ju and her 2 staff. So she seems to be the QC manager and she has 2 staff. So there are only 3 people, there is no proper supervision, and there is no kind of internal control as to how these people are working. So I don't think there is any attendance system there, whether they are coming there or not, how many hours they are working, their quality of work, nothing seems to be like checked here. So that is a very gross problem. So next one is Operations Director Ben Janoun, who designed the internal control systems in Yaya, rarely visited the QC lab because of its remote location. So he is the one who has designed the internal control system. At least some person should have been sent there. Something like an auditor should have been sent, or an assistant operations director should have been sent. They should have gone there to test how the internal control systems are working effectively in that place. But none of them have gone there. So again, there's a kind of a physical control is not there, or you can even say that organization is not there. So there's no proper organization in terms of who is going to check them. So we can even say the physical control is not there, and even organization structure to control them are not there. So these are the points. Next one, he never asked for information on product failure rates to be reported to him, and did not understand the science involved in the QC process. So again, this is a management control failure. He didn't ask for any information. That is a very bad kind of a problem here. He shouldn't have done it. Even though he couldn't understand the science involved behind it, he should have got an external verification regarding the report. So he has failed there grossly, and that's a management control problem. He relied on 2 QC staff, Jane Ju and her assistant John Jong, both of whom did have relevant scientific qualifications. So again, there's a SC here, segregation of duties. He depends on only 2 people here. So one is the manager of QC, and one of her assistants. So there is no kind of segregation of duties between these people. So this can also lead to a problem. Why a job has to be segregated is, only when job is segregated, it's much more easier to create an internal control system and check whether both these people have worked. But here only the work of Jean Zhang seems to be like approved by the Jane Ju. So there is kind of a overlap between their work, so that the segregation of duties should have been much more proper. So that is a problem there. The 2 QC staff considered themselves low paid, while in theory they reported to Mr. Janoun. In practice, they conducted their work with little contact with the colleagues. So even though these 2 QC staff should report to Mr. Janoun, they didn't seem to do that at all. So that's a total failure. And 2, there has been no supervision on them. So Mr. Janoun, who's their supervisor, he should have supervised. So that again is a failure. The work was routine nature and involved testing products against a set of complaints. A single signature on a product complaints report was required to pass or fail in QC. So whether the products are of good quality or bad quality is just a single signature. Again, there should have been segregation of duty, where one person says that the items are bad, another person approves it. So there is a segregation of duty problem, and there is also an authorization problem. So who is authorizing it, on what basis are they doing, that doesn't seem to be the right demarcation of work. And the next is, and these reports were then filed away with no one else seeing them. So again, there's a supervision problem. These reports have to be sent to the management. So the management, again, there's a management control problem here. So the supervision problem and management problem, and these seems to be the problems. I think we'll read the last paragraph. It was eventually established that Jane Ju had found a local buyer to pay her directly, or for any of Yaya's products which had failed the QC test. So that is the reason for the increase in the QC test. The increased failure rate had resulted from her signing products as having failed QC when in fact they passed. She kept the proceeds from the sale for herself and also her assistant John Jung, a proportion of the proceeds from the sale of failed products. So this again seems to be another problem. But somewhere we can easily find out that there have been like so many areas where the company has failed. So if we could count like how many areas they have failed is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we have got around some 9 points here. So somewhere I think there's one more point which is hiding somewhere. So if you could just pick out these points like this from here and then you put it under headings, and if you give, it would look neat and also would represent your answer in a clear manner. So for each point, I think for segregation and for everything we get a point. For management control we have got a lot of points. Usually in the exam it's not much about whether you give this point in segregation or in physical control. It's all about whether you have found that this is a deficiency in internal control and you know how to address that deficiency. So this question asks you to just find out the deficiency. You have found out it, so you will get the marks. If you have wrongly put it in physical control or authorization, you will still get some marks, you will get, but not the entire full mark. So you will get some marks here. Okay, we will now discuss part C. Discuss the general qualities of useful information, stating clearly how they could benefit Mr. Janon. So whenever they ask a question regarding the qualities of useful information, you have to write the acronym accurate. If you're not sure about this, you have to check it in Google. So accurate refers to what are the qualities of a good information. The second question is recommend specific measures which would improve information flow from the QC lab to Mr. Janon. So the information should have been prepared in a specific format. It should be signed by a proper authority. It should tell like who has done the QC check. It has to reach the Mr. Janon in a specific time period, and these are the ways in which we could get this mark. So this is also a kind of a general question only here, but the main emphasis of this case study is in this point. I think we have discussed this question in a nice detail. Hope this you would have found it useful. We will meet in the next video.